It's exciting to welcome him back after a hiatus. How about it for the great David K. Johnston, Pulitzer Prize winner, now at RIT. Professor, always great to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
I was commenting before.
And I must say, you sent us some Coachella Valley coffee, and we've been on it ever since.
I love it. David K. Johnston with it. Synchronous sips. I love it. David, I'm going to ask you to respond to this right out of the chute. This is Tony with a $7 super chat saying, don't you think Trump, this is about Putin and about the about face on Ukraine, meaning now he seems to be talking to Ukraine about longer range missiles being provided and American aid being stepped up. It's really, it's wild that this same guy seemed to be completely doing a kind of a surrender on the part of Ukraine when he first took office. Anyway, don't you think Trump is just faking his anger at Putin and giving Putin more time, another 50 days, to destroy Ukraine? Wow. What do you think?
Well, there are a lot of people who are certainly thinking that. I was stopped at the gym today by one of my Ukrainian friends, and that was exactly their argument, that this was really a head fake. And my answer to that is, no, I don't think so. Donald is... let's keep in mind, first and foremost, Donald is appallingly ignorant. He doesn't know anything. And what he does know is this. He promised that on day one, he would bring an end to this war, and he hasn't gotten it. And he knows that over time, this is very damaging for him if this war goes on. So he needs to do something to cement his position and to shore up the trouble he's got. And at the same time, he's got to be very wary about what's going on about the Epstein files and the level of disenchantment going on among the MAGA crowd, who, after all, very tied to Donald, could be wooed away by somebody else who promised them what they think they want in their similarly appalling ignorance. I do think that the game is going to change here between Ukraine and Russia. The Europeans have been stepping up more because they recognize that if Ukraine goes down, they face a half century of expansionistic wars by the Russians, even when Vladimir Putin is gone. I mean, the next guy in line to replace Putin, it looks like, makes him look less serious.
So, right. It's odd that the rogues gallery ahead is pretty dangerous.
But Donald can turn on a dime. Donald can turn around tomorrow and resume his nonsense that Ukraine started the war and Ukraine attacked Russia because there's no principles, there's no interest. And I don't know if you saw Friday or Saturday, this long rant he gave in the White House in response to a reporter's question where he talked about magnets lifting airplanes into the sky. It's about 7 minutes into the video, and it's indicative of Donald's not only poor mental health, but combine that with his just utter lack of knowledge. For those who don't know this, Donald had to be told why there was a memorial at the USS Arizona when he was taken there a couple of months into the first administration. And how anyone in America could not know a date that will live in infamy and what happened at Pearl Harbor in 1941 is beyond appalling.
It's not just anyone either. It's the President of the United States.
Yeah. And he simply doesn't know anything. It's all bluster.
So you're saying don't give him too much credit for the 3D chess of the Ukraine-Putin back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I suspect we will start sending some more weapons to Ukraine because Trump does need somehow to push Putin. But Putin, from his perspective, even though he's a dictator, a quote unquote democratically elected dictator, as is Donald, he can't ignore the fact that he has caused the deaths of so many young men. I mean, just the 12 months of the third year of the war cost 400,000 Russian combat deaths, not casualties, deaths. Casualties, for those who don't know, includes people who are injured. And they gained 0.5% of Ukrainian territory at a cost of 400,000. So all across Russia, there are families whose man or oldest or grown sons are not there. And this is causing a lot of economic hardship. So he can't just stop.
That's really interesting because on the one hand, you think it's touched so many Russians that there is an imperative to stop. But by the same token, you're saying the goal of getting Ukraine or returning Ukraine to Russia is something that that must be respected because of all the investment that Putin's already made.
And remember also that, unless you are diligent about it, the only news you get in Russia is state-approved news. That is, it's only propaganda. So you, as a Russian, have a distorted version of this. And Russians are raised with this concept of Mir, M-I-R, meaning the world, the Mir space station. And the concept of Mir includes the notion that we're special, we're tough, we can endure whatever is needed, unlike those soft, corrupt people in Europe and America. And so having called upon this sacrifice from people, that just adds to the box that Putin has put himself into, because Putin is not good at long-term strategy. He's mostly a rather short-term tactician, and of course, totally misunderstood what was going to happen when he invaded. He literally thought, in the intelligence we had gathered, that the Biden administration took the extraordinary step of releasing about 4 or 5 months before the invasion showed. They thought, yeah, this is going to be a walk in the park. It's going to be like when the U.S. went after Saddam Hussein. Of course, we had peppered the officer corps in Iraq with messages, and the grunts with leaflets dropped from the sky saying, don't resist and we're not going to kill you. If you do resist, sorry, we'll have to kill you. I mean, that was the essence of the message. And so they didn't fight back very hard on behalf of Saddam.
Yeah. So from that now to something that you referenced, and it is politically seismic what's happening in the MAGA movement and the conspiracy theory, QAnon adjacent crew that vaulted Trump into office. I mean, it's a big part of his constituency that expected a kind of transparency, a promise of JFK, MLK, UFOs, Epstein files. It's all coming out because those people want to suppress it, and particularly in the case of Epstein, because it's all a bunch of Democrats. The Epstein files are going to be revelations about Democrats. Here's what they're saying now. Go ahead, Tony, please.
How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation?
What I'm getting at is, at some point, we want answers at some point.
Yeah, answer the questions. That's it. Who went to Epstein Islands? Who specifically went on the plane? Who stayed for more than a night?
I don't think they're telling us the truth about Epstein.
I will not rest until we go full Jan 6 committee on the Jeffrey Epstein files.
I supported Donald Trump in this last election. Yes, he did just actively cover up a giant child rapist ring.
Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American.
Release all the Epstein files, no matter the consequences.
There is no way that we are going to act like the proven harm and abuse that Jeffrey Epstein has caused never happened.
And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working?
If you want the full release of documents, the special prosecutor gets it, and here's why. Epstein is a key that picks the lock on so many things.
So they've created a narrative that suggests that Jeffrey Epstein, as Bannon was just saying, is sort of the linchpin to all kinds of other scandal. Now, there's nothing to see here. That's the new word from the administration. As you suggested, Bondi, Patel, Bongino, their top Justice Department and FBI officials and White House people with great gravitas and leverage with Trump, there's an internecine dispute. Speak to what's going on here politically and then just practically.
Well, the MAGA people were promised something that was made a big deal to them. For years, they were fed this story about Jeffrey Epstein. Not only is he a child rapist, but he's compromised people using presumably audio or videotapes of these people raping girls. And we know that, Donald was seen with Epstein repeatedly. He says, I met him a few times. That's the kind of lie Donald tries to get away with. So they expected to see these files. Now, their assumption has always been it's going to reveal all these terrible Democrats. I mean, just yesterday, I saw another, and it was modern, not from years ago, video about the child blood drinking, cannibal, child rapist Hillary Clinton nonsense.
Right.
So
they
a lot
shot
of
up
these
that
people
pizza
live,
place, right, in Washington,
Right, yeah.
following up on that.
Right. They're way out in space about many of these things. Trump's problem is that he promised to release these files. By the way, who was Attorney General of Florida at the time a lot of this was going on? Oh, Pam Bondi. So this is a deep division it's creating among the MAGA crowd. And it's also encouraging the really crazy comments of Tucker Carlson, because we don't have any evidence that Epstein was working on behalf of foreign governments. I haven't seen one iota of evidence of that. Doesn't mean material he had might not have been and would be very valuable to hostile foreign governments. I don't see a way out of this for Trump except trying to make it go away, get people off onto other issues, and that will allow it to go away. And I think the Democrats need to be pressing this solidly.
Which they're doing, right, David? I mean, Ro Khanna, introduced that legislation to actually release the files, and the GOP voted it down.
Yeah. Well, that's because at the end of the day, they're going to protect Donald. And so long as they control the House and the Senate, they can protect him, which means it's going to matter a great deal who controls the House next year. And it's possible the Senate would change hands. And if that's the case for Trump, he's got really serious problems. I don't think you can convict him on impeachment. It requires 70 votes, but barring something unexpected happening between now and then. But you absolutely can lay out the record here on what's happening. One other thing to keep in mind about all of this, the administration and Pam Bondi in particular keep saying we don't have a list. That doesn't literally mean there is a document or a piece of paper that has the names of people on a list. You construct a list from things like manifests for his various jet aircraft, logs for who stayed, visitor logs, telephone logs. So don't be misled when they will at some point come back and say there is no list again, which is exactly what Pam Bondi said. That's like saying we don't have your pay stubs. If the IRS were to say that to you, we don't care. We know how much you got paid and how much was withheld from your check.
Yeah, I wanted to play something for you. I see this guy as a Trump surrogate, mostly Dershowitz.
Yes.
He's a problematic figure in many ways. He's also a very smart guy, obviously, which makes some of what he says, he's represented, as you know, so many, including Jeffrey Epstein, makes so much of what he says a little tough sometimes to decode. I want to play a little bit of it, though, for you and just get your reaction. This is Alan Dershowitz talking about what you're speaking about, the existence of a list, a file, names, etc. Go ahead, Tony.
No, there is no client list. There never has been a client list. A client list suggests that Jeffrey Epstein made a list of people to whom he trafficked women. What there is a redacted FBI affidavit from accusers. There are several of them. From accusers that accuse Jeffrey, that accuse various people of having improper sex. And that has been redacted. The names of the people accused have been blacked out. Now, of course, because I was the lawyer and I did all the investigations, I know who all these people are. I could figure out, based on everything that I saw, who Mr. X is, Mr. Y is, and Mr. Z. I can tell you right now, none of them are public figures who are currently in office. Some of them were previously in office. Some of them are dead. But there is no client list. And the redactions could be undone if you go to court.
Yeah.
I see him as a surrogate, so I try to, allow for that in discounting whatever he has to say. I also see him as something of an Epstein insider, David. To be fair, he, along with Trump, they were with Epstein a lot. I mean, Trump and Epstein were a couple of, international playboys who were together all the time. I mean, a lot of the time. But Epstein also close to Dershowitz, certainly in terms of legal representation. Give me your thoughts sort of on what Dershowitz was saying.
Well, the most important thing he said, and it was very subtle, was he excluded Donald Trump from the list of people because he said no one currently in office. And this has been part of the effort to say these were Democrats. There are probably some Democrats in there. They're Republicans. I don't think they were picked for their connection to power. They're also trying to argue that Epstein was not blackmailing people. Epstein has no known expertise in finance. He had no track record in finance, and yet he ended up managing a large volume of money for several very wealthy people he drew into his circle. So I think it's not unreasonable to believe that what Epstein would do is he would get you in a compromising situation, and not in any confrontational way, but a very subtle business-like way, make it clear that you needed to have him manage some of your money. I would love to just see the track record on who deposited money with him, what the investment returns are, and what the withdrawals were on behalf of Epstein. Notice I said on behalf of him because I'm sure he was very sophisticated about all of this. The royal family has essentially cut Prince Andrew out of the mix. To think that British intelligence isn't able to figure out what was going on here and whether his denials were credible would be foolish. Of course, they have figured that out. And that they have cut him out of the mix tells you that this is not some imaginary issue. And remember, we have a whole group of young women. At the time, some of them were 14 years old, who have come forward. They've been consistent in their stories. Julie Brown's reporting in the Miami Herald on this has been solid. All of it is held up to these tremendous attacks by people around Trump. Dershowitz is, as someone who, apart from being a professor at Harvard Law, represented people in some very famous criminal cases, has proven very adept at how to confuse people, how to lead them away from rather obvious facts, which is one of the key roles of criminal defense lawyers. That's your job, is to get your client off. So I think that what should happen is the administration should go to court and say, we want court approval to remove all of these records, all of the redactions, and put it out there. Now, Dershowitz does make one point, and that is that there are people in there who are being accused by someone else. Well, let's treat them in two categories. People who are in Epstein's own self-generated files, which brings us to my last point, which is one of the defenses being put up now is, well, it was really Obama and Clinton, that people working for them, who created these files. Biden's people created these files. Utter nonsense, and just a further effort to confuse the MAGArati, who are also the ignoranti of America.
That is absolutely exactly what's happening today. I mean, the day's special, political special of disinformation is exactly what you're saying, David, which is this entire thing was concocted by the Democrats, and they will try to find a way to tag the Democrats. Now, last thing on this, and then I want to move on to the immigration policies, which are increasingly shocking. But the last thing is that they have successfully, I mean, through sweat, through threat, or just charm from Trump, moved some of these influencers, MAGA influencers, off this subject, gotten them to kind of, nothing to see here this. It's remarkable the power of the White House and of Trump to get that to happen.
Well, all White Houses have a lot of power to get people to either bend to their will or back off. I mean, who wants to go get into a big fight with the President of the United States with the resources he has, particularly Donald, who has no compunctions about finding excuses to go after you? And there are lots of things our government can do to hobble your life and make it difficult. If that's what people are instructed to do. And remember, the studies by Milgram and Zimbardo and others show that somewhere between 10 and 20% of people will not just follow orders, but 80% roughly will just do what they're told to do. I'm deeply concerned about how this changes and the narrative. And I think the Democrats and the never MAGA Republicans, people like the Lincoln Project, really need to stay on this and have a disciplined message, just as they need to have with your previous guest about Medicaid and rural hospitals and Medicare and rural hospitals. They need to have a dedicated message, a tightly disciplined theme to keep pushing this issue and not letting it go away. Now, remember that the MAGA crowd, more than people in general, operates on a visceral level. These are not people who get paid to sit around and think about issues. So they can be moved, but you've got to have various outrages. One of the things the Democrats could do is get some of the women who haven't come forward publicly. Their names are in the record but redacted. Get some more of them to come forward. Put more information out there. Talk about Prince Andrew and the fact that the royal family has pushed him aside, very clearly done that. And then press also for the financial records, because the financial records are going to tell you, of course, he was running an extortion scheme.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, it seems the Democrats are doing some of this. We'll see how
They
it all
are.
games out. Yeah.
They are. They seem to be doing better on this. They've been flailing for a long time. This will not get them what they want. It will simply limit what Trump and his people can do. They still need to develop a message. In the words of my late brother, what have the Democrats done for me?
Right, right. Yeah, bold messages and bold plans are carrying the day. You can look at the mayoral race in New York to see that. I want to get to this immigration thing, David, because it does involve the law, and you've lectured around the world on American law and on constitutional rights and liberties. And it's an interesting place that immigrants, and again, these are immigrants detained because they've come here, quote, illegally, but many of them were on their way to, I just related a story about one immigrant. She was a healthcare worker and a child care worker working with autistic kids. And she and her family were actually on their way to a court-ordered check-in with ICE. They arrest them and they deport them. So these are people that they don't apprehend in the shadows. They are going to the courthouses, among other places, to get these people. And now they're suggesting they can be detained. I mean, this is the ICE order without regard to any freedom prior to their case coming up, which could be months or years before that case is actually heard.
Well, there's a video of Tom Homan saying that we have the right to detain anybody. And no, that's very clear to the Constitution. You do not have a right to detain anybody. The lawlessness here is astonishing. And when members of Congress went and inspected Alligator Auschwitz, and let's call it what it is, it's a concentration camp, and it could easily, just from a hurricane, turn into a death camp because people will be trapped there in this low-lying area in the Everglades. Several of the Congress people said there were people shouting out, "I'm a U.S. citizen." And they're not listening to the arguments, "I'm a U.S. citizen." That's something courts should be taking very seriously about how they're grabbing people off the streets. But the reason they're grabbing compliant people off the streets, they're in one case leaving a child in the backseat of a car for which you or I could be prosecuted and sent to prison for a long time, is because that's what they were told to do. And bureaucracies, whether it's the LAPD, the IRS, or the Environmental Protection Agency, bureaucracies do what they're told to do. On the whole, a handful of people will resign and protest. A few will complain inside, but that's what they do. They follow their directives and orders. And there aren't masses of rapists and murderers out there. It was all a lie. So to fulfill Stephen Miller's wishes as Trump's minister of hate, they've got to grab people indiscriminately. And where better to grab people than when they show up for their hearings that they're being compliant, when they go to work, when they drop off or pick up their children at school, Why make an effort to identify people who have a criminal record and then case their homes and pounce on them before dawn, which is what you would reasonably have expected Trump was going to do based on his campaign language. And underneath all of this, we should never lose sight of the fact that Make America Great Again, and I've been saying this now since he started that phrase, is simply code for Make America White Again. And if we can't get you out of the country because your skin doesn't look like you or me, we're going to at least put you in your place.
Yeah, that's certainly reflected in the show of force in MacArthur Park in Los Angeles, with the horseback riding feds coming in, with the customs officers sweeping with a Black Hawk helicopter. I mean, it was crazy, and there were no real arrests made based on what we could. It was just an intimidation tactic, and as you say, kind of a message. But now let me just ask you about this, the other judge's ruling on some of what you're talking about, which is you can't detain someone based on the color of their skin. You can't detain them based on their accent or language, etc. This is an injunction against the policies of ICE.
So here's how you get around that if you're an ICE officer. Any experienced police officer will tell you that within a quarter mile to a half mile of driving, they can find an excuse to pull you over. You were 1 mile below the speed limit. You were 1 mile over the speed limit. You weren't perfectly staying in your own lane. And so they will find excuses to cover that up in order to detain people and grab them. We really should be very deeply troubled that they're not wearing insignia and we've had a couple of cases already of where men were trying to grab women off the street, presumably to rape them and perhaps murder them, posing as ICE officers. That should be very, very concerning to us. That, on the other hand, this is a pro-criminal administration. Trump has now pardoned a whole series of men convicted of raping children, of rape, of violent crimes against women. He has pardoned major drug dealers. And of course, as I reported in my book, The Making of Donald Trump, and I encourage people to go to the public library and read the chapter with Mercy in the title about how Donald was involved up to his eyeballs with one of the biggest cocaine traffickers in America, did extraordinary favors for him that make no sense for anyone, but especially not a casino owner who's supposed to be very highly regulated in terms of his connections. And how that case got moved from Ohio to the New Jersey courtroom of a newly appointed federal judge named Marianne Trump Berry, with almost no penalties for this major cocaine trafficker who lives in Santa Monica now. Not that far from you, Mark.
I didn't know that. I remember the chapter from your book, though. I remember this story. Yeah.
And so this is a pro-criminal administration. Russell Vogt, who came from Heritage, was the principal architect of the Project 2025 and now runs the very powerful Office of Management and Budget. He also used one of his secondary positions that Trump has given him to arrange that Navy Federal Credit Union, which appears to be this very corrupt nonprofit credit union, was supposed to pay $80 million back to Navy members and veterans who'd been overcharged, and $15 million in penalties, and they just wiped it out. So it's also an anti-veteran presidency. They've cut the VA, they've cut VA services, and as I mentioned in the show before, as the son of a 100% disabled veteran of World War II, this is something I am not completely unbiased about. That's it gets deep into my soul. But they are systematically enabling and helping criminals they think are their friends. Some of the people Trump pardoned have been rearrested for crimes. Donald Trump is helping sexual predators, particularly those who go after underage girls. So we need to really make sure that message gets out there. By the way, go look at there's some really fantastic reporting going on in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, some in the LA Times, and The Guardian, the British newspaper that has a US edition, The Guardian, about a lot of this stuff. But the one thing I've seen very little coverage of is these pardons of criminals, serious criminals who are doing the very things Trump ran against. I'm against murders, rapists, and drug traffickers. Really? Who are you pardoning? Because he's doing them now, and he does one later, and he does another one later on.
Well, if they've pledged a kind of allegiance to Trump, if they've been MAGA worthy, then that really is the only litmus test. We've talked about a bunch of these cases, and it's really as bad as David is saying.
And there's
I'm out
some
of
very
time
good
with
evidence. Some of these people, Mark, have been putting money into Trump's pocket through their family, through campaign contributions, through buying meme coins, and through other devices. Because Trump now has this terrific corruption mechanism to enrich himself. And, you know, for years ago, I proved Donald wasn't a billionaire. The government then established that shortly after I did, months after. He's now a billionaire.
Yeah, he's finally made it.
He's now a billionaire. He's a billionaire from corruption, not from anything he did that built a better mousetrap, but provided a better service, but from corruption.
That's one of the great virtues of crypto for him, I'm talking about, because it allows this flow of billions of dollars that are just untraceable in terms of identity.
Oh, they're traceable now if we want to trace them. It's very hard.
They're traceable, yeah. The blockchain gives you traceability, but yeah, as you say, you have to have the mechanisms, governmental mechanisms to do it. I'm going to let you go, but I did want to get to tariffs today, and maybe next week we'll know more, because I think, you know, we'll know whether he's just, you know, juking and jabbing, or if he's actually, you know, going through with this. But he's, you know, this 50% tariff on Brazil. He's putting Vietnam back on the griddle. I don't understand why. This is a system of real patronage. You make me think about it when you talk about his corruption, because this is straight up patronage. It's these different countries coming to Donald Trump and trying to give him something to give them a break.
Well, Donald is very mercurial. He can do things on a dime. He doesn't have the legal authority to be doing these tariffs. Congress controls tariffs. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. The very reason that we replaced the first American Republic under the Articles of Confederation with the U.S. Constitution was so we could be taxed by our Congress, so we could tax ourselves through Congress. And that's not a power held by the president. But yeah, you know, Donald promised lower prices. Your coffee's going to cost you more, folks, because of this. And what really we should be focused on is the longer range damage, because the rest of the world is not calling up Donald Trump, as he claims, and saying, "Oh, Mr. President, thank you for doing this, sir. We appreciate it so much." Absolute fantasy. You're already seeing indications the EU has developed a tariff list calculated to strike back at us. You're going to see people hurt, like the people who make bourbon in Kentucky, if you're a bourbon drinker in Europe. The Canadians have now said through their government, our relationship with the U.S. is over. And Donald, you know, Smith, we don't care about Canada. It's irrelevant in trade. It's our biggest trading partner, our biggest number one trading partner, which tells you how ignorant Donald is. The nightmare scenario is the rest of the world, perhaps minus China, gets together and creates a new free trade zone. And they just cut us out of here. And this notion that, well, we're special, you know, we're as rich as we are because we're Americans. No, we're as rich as we are because fundamentally we did a better job at getting the rules that motivate people to study, to develop, to advance human knowledge. Knowledge is power, and knowledge is money in many, many cases. Not all, but many. And if we don't get those rules right, we can become like England, a stagnant economy with nowhere to go unless they can get back into the EU, which turns out surveys are showing most people in Europe are saying, all right, they made a mistake, let them back in. Punish them some, but let them back in. The long-term future for the U.S. is not greater wealth, except for those people who operate on an international scale, can put their money wherever they want, and to them, it's irrelevant. Whatever the world wealth level is the level that they can work with. But if Europe, Canada, Japan, Singapore, Australia, et cetera, get together and form a new trading zone and cut us out of it, oh my God, the damage that they can do to us internally.
Yeah.
Without ever firing a shot, without ever doing anything except being nice to each other.
Yeah, this is the new real theater of conflict, right, David? I mean, trade has really been, and economics has been and relative economics, that is to say, countries relative to each other. That's really been where there has been conflict and tension and things that are then worked out diplomatically for years now. It's such an odd thing to have this president. It's so odd that when I say this president, it even just shocks me that he was able to pull this off, because you just say it was really a con. And I think it's one of those things where you become president based on a good rap these days. It's just right. I mean, I don't know. I'm expressing general frustration, but I appreciate all of your thoughts on this, and let's visit again next week. Thanks again for visiting with us. All right. David K. Johnston, everybody. Yeah. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.